So creativity, in terms of your work within organizations and being a catalyst for creativity, let's start by your interpretation of creativity in that respect.
Sure. Well, first of all, the way I see creativity is that it has to do with creating something new. And in the business world, it also has to be useful. So if it's a new idea, but it's not useful and it's irrelevant, then it's not creative. So it has to also produce some kind of value. So creativity comes from imaginative ideas. And from these imaginative ideas, we turn that idea into action. So if you have lots of ideas, but you don't act on them, you don't turn them into some kind of reality, then you're imaginative, but you're not creative. And when you take action on those ideas and you give them form, then that phase also could be called innovation. So you can't be innovative without being creative, and you can't be creative without being imaginative. And so I help people in organizations develop their skills in creativity. And I do that through all kinds of methods and activities related to the arts, through theater improv, through visual arts, through drawing, through painting, through sculpting, and also through classic creative problem solving methodologies, as well as design thinking. So I integrate all of these. So it's multidisciplinary, multisensory experience.
Okay. And sometimes a consultant will go into an organization and they will be given a set of outcomes that are desired. Whereas with a creative approach, when we're relying on emergence, sometimes it can be hard to define what those outcomes will be, right?
Well, yes and no. What I like to do is go through a discovery process with clients to find out what would be some good challenges to work on for the group, where we can sink our teeth into artistic practices and artistic ways of knowing and aesthetic-based dialogue on something that is people-centered and complex. So mostly people in organizations, well, in business, have a real challenge working with situations that are ambiguous and possibly chaotic. And what I find is that they want to solve that problem right away and get through that horrible experience of being confused and being in a place of ambiguity. And so what I invite people to do is to slow down and find something interesting about the ambiguity, and to be curious and to just immerse in a process of discovery. And through that, we find insights. So I use art in some ways as a means of having a dialogue through which we create a container characterized by freedom and trust, through which we connect with each other and have meaningful conversations about a topic that matters, and to extract what I call group gold. So I used to call myself a creativity catalyst, where I was using these activities to catalyze creativity. But then I realized after a few years that this is really a form of alchemy. It's taking leaden thinking and turning it into the gold of wisdom. So it's most helpful when there is some kind of an outcome from these activities, whether it's solving a particular problem, particular challenge that the that the group has, or whether it's about leadership development and discovering new insights about oneself and one's creative abilities. So it's also about developing creative confidence, and it's about developing the skills, the mindset, the tool sets, and so on, to create a climate that is idea friendly, that supports creativity. So it's also about helping people lead creatively, which is to create that container, that container of safety and trust, where it's safe to take conceptual risks, and you don't have to be super smart all the time, and you can make mistakes and you can experiment. And it's out of that kind of experimentation and risk taking that new ideas, new illuminations can emerge.
And you go into organizations as a consultant, and your presence is like a catalyst to induce alchemy, as you say. And what I notice is that sometimes when a creative person is part of the organization, they're not a consultant who is coming in to do a particular piece of work. They're actually there as part of the organization. There seem to be disruptors. They're being creative, but they seem to be disruptive. And sometimes they can find themselves in a hostile environment because people don't always buy into their ideas because they are different to the status quo. Whereas for a consultant who came in, perhaps with those same ideas, the consultant comes in at the right time, at the right place, when people are open and receptive. They might be received more generously than the person who is actually a part of that organization.
Well, I, as a consultant, don't really, in a way, have ideas for the organization. Most of the companies I work with are in technology, let's say, or healthcare or manufacturing, and I am not a subject matter expert in their business. So I don't necessarily have answers for them about running their business. But what I am an expert in is the process of creativity, the process of innovation, the process of collaboration, and to help people make sense of these processes, and to help create a space where they can collaborate and work together and uncover ideas and answers for themselves. And so it's true, there are people who come up with ideas, and they're not necessarily well received by the group or by the company. And I address those kind of things in some of my coaching with clients and workshops. And I had to learn myself how to get people on board with ideas, because before I was in this kind of work, I had a business where I was a graphic designer for marketing communications. So that was when I did come up with solutions for clients. And I worked with big hotels and mining companies and real estate developers and manufacturers. And so they would tell me what they wanted, and I would come up with a solution, and it wasn't necessarily what they expected. And so if it wasn't what they expected, then they sometimes were closed-minded about it. And so one of the tricks I learned when I was a designer was to always give the client at least 3 options, and make the ideas kind of rough so that I could engage the client in the creative process to a certain degree. So when people feel that they are involved in the creativity of something, in the creation of something, they're more invested in it. And so so what I help people do in organizations is work collaboratively and get the client involved. And it's easy to say no to one idea. It's harder to say no to three. And also, when you are presenting ideas, then you need to be able to present in a way that can have influence over your client and have impact. So there's certain ways of presenting, and that includes, is this idea in alignment with the objective of the company? Is it in alignment with the strategic direction of the company? Because if it isn't, then it's unlikely you're going to get buy-in, because the resources are going to be used for the actual strategic direction of where the company's going. So you need to make sure that your ideas are in alignment with that, and leaders need to make sure that they've communicated that to their teams, so people know where to put their ideas and where to direct their creativity. So in that sense, it's a two-way street. So then you need to understand the context of the problem and who is involved. And then you need to have a big idea about, what your solution is, what impact is it going to have on people or the system, and how are you going to put it into action. So if you can present your ideas using these elements, then you're more likely to get buy-in.
And as you were talking, it reminded me of this, people keep talking about thinking outside of the box. And
yes,
very often that thinking outside of the box, ideas that are outside of the box, are not going to be useful because they don't align with the strategic objectives of the organization. So they might be very useful for another organization, but not for the organization that's investing in that strategy.
Yeah, yes, I think it's situational, because sometimes if you're stuck on a problem and you're not getting anywhere, or you're not growing in terms of innovation, you're just sort of stagnating. Well, you do need to think outside of the box to grow the business. You need to figure out new ways of doing things and new ways to wow your customers, new ways to create engagement, and so on. But creativity is not only thinking outside of the box, it's also thinking inside of the box, because you have to also work within rules and regulations, with the system, with the resources you have, with timing, and so on. So I like to tell my clients that creativity is a whole brain thinking function. And I do refer to the work of Ned Herman, who created an instrument for whole brain thinking. And he had studied managers and their thinking preferences at GE. So he analyzed the thinking preferences of thousands of managers over the years. And he divided the brain into 4 parts, which I really like. I like things divided into 4, not 16. It's easy to remember. And so, so the 4 parts of whole brain thinking have to do with analytical thinking, artistic thinking, using the imagination, relational thinking, gut responses, and then operational thinking. So it's facts, futures, feelings, and form. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really nice way to organize your thinking. And also when you're innovating, you need to make sure that you have whole brain thinkers on your team. Otherwise, you are not using your full capacity for thinking up and thinking through things. So we're all whole brain thinkers, otherwise we couldn't function as human beings, but we do have preferences.
And there is also the unconscious as well, isn't there? That,
yes.
A lot of we need to tap into the unconscious. If it's just simply conscious, it's going to be a limited.
Yes. Yes, I like in the whole brain model, I would include the unconscious in the right side of the brain, and the artistic ways of thinking, and also the relational ways of thinking, because um, that has to do with intuition as well. Yeah, so that includes intuition and the unconscious.
Mhm.
And I do help people draw upon the unconscious through meditation, and actually just through being in the flow with art making. That just quiets down the left brain chatter and allows and the imagination to kick in.
Okay. Now, thinking about your presence, and I can see that when you're in a space where you're not an expert in technology and the the skills that that organization has, it can be a lot easier in a way to be accepted because there's not a clash of ideas. You know, you're not competing with existing ideas. You're there to be a catalyst and to be the alchemist, transforming what, eliciting from the people around you. And emergence can take place in a very natural way then, can't it?
Yes.
And how does that have an impact on you? So, um, in terms of the feedback loops, when you're in an organization and you are being a catalyst, does the impact of what you're doing transform your presence in some way?
I imagine it does. So yeah, so I take people through a whole process of um, becoming present in the moment, being aware of the body, using the hands. We have a lot of hands on activities, and what I remind people of is that our mind is not only in our brain, it's in our hands. And then our when and there is a lot of information that can come through our hands. And so sometimes I will ask a big question of a group, like, what is the world asking of us? That's just such a great question to ask. And I say, don't answer verbally, answer with your hands. And I give people clay to work with, or painting. And so they answer with their hands. And sometimes I take people through a meditation first, and then they have to paint what they experience and
I suppose in a way that's allowing the unconscious to express
and the
itself, isn't it?
painting. So that is an emergent process. And then people are invited to have a dialogue with each other after. And so the dialogue is also about listening. It's about listening, reflecting, and understanding. And so as we go through the day, then I will ask, what is emerging? What, especially when we're working on something really complex, well, we have entertained many points of view from the different people in the room. And then we can start to collect what patterns are you seeing, and what insights are you receiving, and what is emerging, what is the emerging story. And when we are innovating, and we want to be co-creating the future, and to explore what is the world asking of us, and what is meaningful, and how, like I believe, and I like to tell my clients this, I believe that the purpose of business, besides making money, because if you don't make a profit, you're not in business. So besides that, as far as I'm concerned, the purpose of being in business is to improve the quality of life for people and the planet. And so what are the ways that we can do that? And as we, and I'm just thinking about the pandemic right now. And the way I see it, we are we are in between two worlds. We are between an ending of an old world and the beginning of a new one. So I think it was William Bridges who talked about this space as being a zone of transition. It's an in-between space. Some people call it a liminal space. And it's a very chaotic and confusing space to be in. And we're all experiencing it right now. But this is a time of tremendous opportunity for creativity, and it's a time to be bold. And so we are, humanity is being invited to now pause, think about how we've been behaving in the past and the impact we've had on the planet, and what is it that we can change and improve as we move forward. And there are no paths to the future. We carve our own path. So in that sense, we are in an emergent process, or a process of emergence. And so that requires being present. It requires tuning into ourselves and into our own senses and our own knowing, and taking care of ourselves so that we are in a place of calm. If we're in a place of fear, we don't have higher order thinking. We have reptilian brain thinking, which is, being in survival mode. But if we are in a place of calm, then we can be open and receptive to new ideas, to higher orders of thinking, and to be aware of what's going on, not only in ourselves, but in the field. Because we can get clues from our imagination and our creative spirit, but we also get clues from other people and the field we are in, the field being our immediate environment, our community, and our planet. So there are clues everywhere. We get clues from nature and from artists. And so it's about sensing, it's about uncovering patterns, and then making sense of all this. And how do we make sense? It's through entertaining these questions, and for me, journaling and meditation, and being in dialogue with other people to gain insights from, what are other people thinking? And oh yeah, that makes sense. So I think it's really important right now to take time to, try to make sense of things. And I think an easy way to do that is just to be curious about something and follow your curiosity. And so when I'm working with groups in business, then, I invite people to be curious. And so you're looking at this complex challenge. What are you curious about? What does it mean to you? And let the dialogue unfold.
That's right. It's, and very often in a conversation, ideas emerge, as you say. And the thing is that very often we think of creativity as being creating something out of nothing. But at the same time, if we want to create something out of nothing, we have to clear the space for it. And that can mean dismantling something that existed already. In a garden, if we want to replant a garden the way that we've designed it in our mind, we might need to pull out everything that is there already in order to make space for it. And that can be fearful to some. That's what causes anxiety. It's like, well, what is it that we need to get rid of in order to create space for this new emergent future?
Yes, well, we could reframe that question to ask, what has been working really well in the past, and what do we want to carry forward into the future, and what can we leave behind? Mm-hmm. And then from a design point of view, there is this rule in design, if you will, or a principle, that whenever you add something new, you have to take away something. So Apple's really good at that. Apple giveth and Apple taketh away. And sometimes we get really angry at what Apple has taken away. But it's all in the name of elegance, because otherwise we have this bloated software, this really heavy equipment. But also I'm thinking about destruction in the way you were talking about it and in the garden. And it reminds me of what Picasso said about, you have to destroy in order to create. And then if I think about yoga philosophy or the teaching of Patanjali, who said that there are three forces that rule the universe. There's three powers, and they're all creative powers, but it's like there's the power to destroy, the power to sustain, and the power to create. So those three powers are always...
That's the foundation of the Hinduism,
Yes.
Creation, sustenance, and destruction.
Yes, Raja, Sattva, and Tamas. Yes, so I did study yoga and yoga philosophy, and potentially I still follow yoga practices. So when I learned that from Patanjali, it totally made sense. And I was in India 2 summers ago to give a workshop on the art of leadership for a team at Dell at their leadership symposium in Bangalore. So it's really a thrill to talk about Patanjali in India, me being a foreigner. And so Patanjali also said the overriding power that ties all of these forces together is the power of love. Mm-hmm. So, and I think creativity is an act of power. Creativity can destroy, and it can create, and also sustain. So, like in the Western world, I was reading about, why is there all this fear about creativity? And it can be explained through the Greek myths where one of the Greek gods gave fire to humanity, and that represented culture and art and civilization. And the other gods got really jealous, because then humanity became godlike. And so they punished this god for giving these gifts to humanity. And so there is this fear. And also, we've been brainwashed in school, especially in a colonial school system, where you are trained to follow instructions and don't rock the boat, don't ask questions. No, we don't want you to be creative, because initially the colonial school system trained us to be good factory workers.
Right, and not to be disruptive. The students who are disruptive. This is when I was doing my research into creativity, and I was looking at the traits of creative people, and that's when I made the connection. It's like very often in the school environment, they get labeled disruptors. That student is very disruptive, when actually they're very creative.
Yes. So it used to be like that in business too, but now it's not enough to be a linear analytical thinker. It's not enough to solve problems. There's a distinction between creating something and solving a problem. So if all you're doing all day is putting out fires, then you're solving problems, but at the end of the day, you haven't created anything. So if you're focusing on creation, then at the end of the day, you do have a creation. So there's a distinction that's very important that leaders need to be cognizant of.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so to sum up then, Linda, presence, emergence, and impact in the work that you do, how do those three themes integrate with each other?
Well, First of all, these are personal. They are personal practices. They're the coming into presence, as I described earlier, through meditation, through journaling, through self-awareness, all of that. I have to embody that myself in order to have any value for anybody else. And it's from presence that comes emergence. And from emergence comes new insights, new ideas for taking action. And it's those actions, hopefully, that have impact. Those actions form creations which have impact. So I start with myself doing these things, and then I teach these to my clients, whether they're coaching clients or groups, individuals or groups and organizations. And so most people in organizations are time starved, and they're not taking time to reflect. They're not taking time to really try to understand what's going on. They're not taking time for dialogue. So I try to disrupt that pattern and inject new practices, help them instill new practices. And part of what I teach are the discovery skills that were identified by the researchers of the innovators' DNA, Christensen and Gregerson and that team interviewed over 5,000 disruptive innovators, including the usual suspects, Dell, Bezos, and Jobs. And what they found is that these high-performing disruptive innovators had 5 discoveries or 5 habits in common, which could be called discovery skills. And these skills, which are developed through habits, which is really good to know. You don't have to be born with these traits. These skills include including questioning the status quo, observing the world around you for insights and clues, associational thinking, learning how to connect the dots between disparate data to come up with new ideas for innovation, experimentation, so that you are experimenting together, prototyping to try things out. And if it doesn't work, okay, don't spend too much time on it, be on to the next. And then networking. And networking has to do with learning from other people. So go explore conferences or talks outside of your field. Connect with people outside of your field of expertise to gain insights into their ways of thinking, because they could give you insights and new ideas about the work that you're doing. So I would say these discovery skills are also related to the notion of emergence, because the more we practice these discovery skills, the more we'll emerge. And what we're after is insight. So the point of being the point of embracing these discovery practices is to gain insight that gives you new ideas for creativity and new ideas that add value to your clients, your stakeholders.
And you mentioned earlier about the importance of curiosity, and I suppose questioning is one of the ways that we express that curiosity. Questioning can be to challenge, and also because we're simply curious.
Yes. And one of the most important questions you could ask to provoke creativity is to ask what if questions. And I notice really creative people ask what if questions all the time. What if we do this? What if we try that? What about this? Why questions are really great too. Kids are always asking why. And why not? Why not questions assumptions? So we should also be aware of what assumptions we have, and are they true or are they erroneous? And are we putting up barriers, unnecessary barriers based on erroneous disruptions? So the co-author of my book, the book that we collaborated on together, Orchestrating Collaboration at Work using arts-based activities to help teamwork and also enhance creativity, Arthur Van Gundy said our biggest blocks to creativity and business are the assumptions we have. And most of the assumptions are unconscious. So I take people through exercises to make those assumptions explicit, and then use those assumptions to reverse them or modify them, and use them as a catalyst to come up with new ideas.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Linda. That's been an excellent, I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been very interesting and very thought-provoking.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Okay, I'll speak with you soon. Bye for now.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.